Developing right now on Morning News Now, takeover tension from South America to the Kingdom of Denmark. This morning, the White House says it's considering military action to acquire Greenland. This just days after that surprise attack by U.S. forces in Venezuela that led to the capture of the country's leader, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife, now behind bars in a New York City jail.
We have the most lethal, most sophisticated, and most fearsome. It's a fearsome military on planet Earth, and it's not even close. You know, I've been saying it for a long time. Nobody can take us. Nobody.
Meanwhile, President Trump announcing the U.S. will receive tens of millions of barrels of oil from Venezuela. We will bring you the latest. Also this morning, facing a judge, Nick Reiner set to be arraigned on murder charges in the stabbing deaths of his parents, famed director Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle. We'll break down the case ahead of today's hearing. Plus, Safe for Kids, new numbers renewing concerns about the safety of a popular sleep supplement, what doctors want you to know. And the future is now. This year's Consumer Electronics Show is underway in Las Vegas, where the latest and greatest technology is on display. There's our friend Brian Chung. He's going to give us a look up close at some of the hottest new products. Always a fun one.
Exactly. I remember 10 years ago, the big thing at CES was like a car that could kind of sort of park itself in a ramp. Oh, wow. And now cars are just taking us everywhere.
I'll take you down the whole high. Yep.
Exactly. Good to have you with us this morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for starting your day with us. We're going to begin once again today with the latest fallout from the U.S. operation in Venezuela. We are learning new details about Operation Absolute Resolve, including how the White House says the U.S. will be tapping the country's oil reserves. In a post to Truth Social, President Trump said Venezuela will be turning over up to 50 million barrels of oil to be sold in the U.S.
Comes as the Pentagon confirmed 7 U.S. service members were injured in last weekend's raid. 5 of them have already returned to duty. Venezuela's military now says 24 of its troops died in the attack. Cuba had said 32 of its nationals were also killed. Now, the White House is doubling down on its intention to take over Greenland, saying in a statement that using military force remains an option. A reminder, Greenland is a self-governing territory of Denmark, a longtime U.S. ally. We have a team of experts standing by to break down the very latest. Let's start with NBC News senior national security correspondent Courtney Cubie. Courtney, let's start with that new information we're learning about last weekend's raid. The Pentagon confirming 2 military service members are still recovering from their injuries. One of them actually suffered a number of gunshot wounds in the leg. What else do we know?
Yeah, Joe, we know at least 7 individuals, 7 U.S. service members were injured in that raid, and that 5 of them were returned to duty relatively quickly. The other 2, as you mentioned, remain hospitalized, one with some gunshot wounds to the leg area. The real question is exactly when and how did this happen? Now, based on the description that we got from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dan Kane, on Saturday, it seems as if this exchange of gunfire and the majority, if not all of these injuries, may have occurred actually at the compound where this extraction team went in and took Nicolas Maduro and his wife and took them into custody, because we know from the chairman that, in fact, there was what sounds like a pretty fierce gun battle there that included 1 U.S. helicopter being damaged in the exchange of gunfire. But again, all we know is that these individuals were injured. 2 of them at least were relatively serious, still hospitalized. But we don't really know exactly where, when, or how these injuries occurred still, Joe.
Courtney, now let's talk about the oil deal between the U.S. and Venezuela. It will divert $2 billion worth of Venezuelan oil exports to the U.S. instead of China. What else is the White House saying about this?
Yeah, so we don't know all the exact details here, but we do know that the U.S. has been enforcing and threatening essentially an oil embargo on Venezuela for several weeks now, and we've seen them already pursue and in at least one case interdict or take over an oil tanker that was heading from Venezuela potentially to China, at least to Asia. So it's not surprising that the United States would, that President Trump would announce this. The most likely course of action here is that the United States would take that oil, those millions of barrels of oil, off of one of those ships. The president's saying that the Energy Secretary, Chris Wright, would be involved in this, and that the money ultimately would go to benefit both the United States and the people of Venezuela. But exactly how that's going to work still remains to be seen. The president's saying that he would be the one in charge of the money here, though, Savannah.
Also, Courtney, still all these questions about how the U.S. plans to run Venezuela. We know President Trump has threatened to launch a second military operation there if the interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, stops cooperating with the U.S. We're also learning U.S. officials had actually been in discussions with her and her brother months before the raid. That's according to two people who are familiar with a classified briefing to some of the top members of Congress this week. So where do things stand with that right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest question that remains is, I mean, what happens going forward? But the leadership and how exactly the United States is, as the Trump administration has told us, going to be directly involved in running Venezuela going forward. What is that going to look like? And guys, every single day we seem to get a new detail that almost makes it more confusing, right? So we now know, as you said, that Delcy Rodriguez, who's now the acting president in Venezuela, she was sworn in over the weekend after serving as the vice president, that she and her brother, Jorge Rodriguez, were involved in some kind of discussions with administration officials for months now, going back into 2025. But how exactly did that lead to or play out in this raid that we saw that led to, of course, Nicolas Maduro and his wife being taken into custody, now under indictment? We don't know the answer to that. Marco Rubio has talked about how he would be involved and the Trump administration would be directly involved in policy decisions going forward. But then the big question is, if in fact the administration is going to be so directly involved in the policy and in some of the major decisions made by the Venezuelan government going forward, what would the need be for another wave of attacks or another rounds? An even bigger question, what would the target be? So what we saw over the weekend was the U.S. military targeting the Venezuelan military, and then the direct guards who were around Nicolas Maduro and his wife at the time of this raid. So the question is, if in fact they're already taken into custody, what would the need be for another round of U.S. military strikes? We know that the military remains in the region, so if they wanted to take another round, they definitely have the firepower there to do so.
Courtney, before we let you go quickly, we do want to talk about Greenland. In a statement yesterday, the White House said that it is a, quote, national security priority to acquire the Danish territory, even threatening to use military force if necessary. Several U.S. NATO allies have pushed back against that threat. But what else did the White House say here, and how are NATO leaders responding?
Yeah, I mean, NATO is pushing back pretty hard on this, particularly the idea of any kind of a U.S. military intervention for the U.S. to acquire Greenland here. The officials that we're speaking with are saying, yes, absolutely, military interventions on the table, but they're pointing to this hope that they can resolve this more diplomatically. Just candidly, the U.S. is talking about potentially trying to buy Greenland. So, I mean, that's not unprecedented, the U.S. buying territories, but we don't have, it's another thing that we just don't have a lot of detail on. I think the notion of a military intervention here is much further off than the idea of the Trump administration's hope of a diplomatic outcome, and that is exactly because of NATO's involvement. Greenland, as you mentioned, Joe, is part of Denmark. It's administered by Denmark. Denmark, a NATO ally. The U.S. using military force in any way to take it would be a direct violation of Article 5, and it would put the U.S. and very close NATO allies directly at odds. I can't see the Trump administration moving forward with that, but guys, got to tell you, things that we've seen over the last week have surprised me too, so we'll see what happens.
Surprises Courtney. Courtney knows everything. All right. Thank you so much, Courtney. Appreciate your reporting.
And now for some perspective from inside Venezuela, let's bring in Ana Vanessa Herrera. She's a freelance journalist based out of Caracas. Good morning. So we just talked with you last on Monday. Thanks for being with us again. Obviously, still so many questions, but for now, what is the mood like there? What are people focusing on?
Well, they're focusing basically on the here and the now still. We saw this immediately after the bombs started being dropped here in the city of Caracas, and people running out to the supermarkets, pharmacies to get food, water, whatever they needed in case something else happened. And that is still the same. Although some people are trying to recover a sense of normality, the streets are very quiet still. We are not seeing people going and running to their daily chores as we would have expected if this would have not happened. But for sure, people are still a little bit anxious, and it's complicated. I mean, for everyone here, they don't really know what to think, and the news keep changing so fast that people are just wondering, what to do next and what they should do to be safe.
Anna, in addition to that eerie quiet, NBC News is reporting people are seeing an increased presence of government security forces, not to mention armed civilian militias. Tell us more about that and how people are reacting to how that's unfolding on the streets.
Yes, these groups are well known for Venezuelans. They are in Spanish, it's called colectivos. So it's a civilian armed groups that control, that serve as absolute control of different parts of the country. In the case of Caracas, they specifically are in the lower classes and working class neighborhoods to avoid any kind of protest, any kind of demonstration that could disrupt the continuance of the government. We did see a lot of them on this Monday while the ceremony of Delcy Rodriguez being sworn in was taking place. We have reports of colectivos being around the city of Caracas and other parts of the country. It is not as much as I would have expected by now, I'm sorry, because I thought they were going to take over the city. And as you are seeing, most of the colectivos also work hand in hand with security forces, with, let's say, legally established security forces.
We do want to ask you about the oil here, Ana. Overnight, President Trump says Venezuela will turn over up to 50 million barrels of oil to the U.S. How's that being received in Venezuela?
Well, we need to first, we're waiting for confirmation from Delcy Rodriguez herself, because this would be an unprecedented deal, especially after what happened and how they took Nicolas Maduro. We do know that both Nicolas Maduro and Delcy Rodriguez were open to the U.S. Starting investments here in Venezuela. Nicolas Maduro saying so even in December, just days before he was captured in Caracas. And he said specifically that the U.S. Could come here and discuss the new investments. So, but the amount of the deal, the amount of barrels they are promising, allegedly, because again, Venezuela has not confirmed this, it's impressive. So just yesterday, when Delcy Rodriguez was speaking for the first time officially as interim president, she said that Venezuela is being run by the Venezuelan government and that is not being run by any other force. So this breaks a little with whatever Trump is trying to push, the narrative that he controls not only her, but the country.
Ana, thank you very much for joining us once again this week. Appreciate it.
For more on the broader impact this is having in other Latin American countries, we're joined now by Alejandro Lavasco. He is an associate professor of Latin American history at NYU. Alejandro, professor, good to have you with us. So the Venezuelan Interior Minister's Instagram account posted this video yesterday. It shows him. He's surrounded by armed men who appear to be chanting, "Always loyal, never traitors." Explain what role these militia groups play and what you think is going on here.
Yeah, so as Ana Vanessa was saying before, these groups are known as colectivos. They've been around for many years, in fact, some of them going back to the days before Hugo Chavez. But really, since the Maduro government took over, they've served a very surveillance as well as repressive role, especially in controlling popular sectors where, of course, the economic and political crisis has hit most. They also, of course, participate in repressing protests from the mainstream opposition. The question now, especially with the Interior Minister, who does seem to have a lot of sway with them, is how much can they control, how much can the interim authorities control these colectivos to give the appearance or the reality that they actually control the country? If they don't have the ability to create stability in Venezuela, the United States might be thinking that they made the wrong choice in leaving the regime in power.
Let's turn to this announcement from President Trump about Venezuela's oil. We also want to ask you about this. What do you think other Latin American countries will think of this?
I mean, I'm sure countries, especially that have many resources, natural resources to export, are very concerned. I think that they're thinking, if this is the type of extortion that we can expect of the influence of gunboats or military action might take in terms of shaping sovereign nations' foreign policies, they might be next. So part of the question here, and this is what your reporter was saying before, is what does this actually mean? Does it mean that it's the already seized oil? Does it mean that every shipment that will be going out of Venezuela over the next few weeks and months, it's going to be going to the United States? What happens to the administration of the revenues from that oil? Many questions remain, but the threat alone has to be quite unsettling.
And when we talk about neighbors, we know the White House has already made threats against Colombia, Venezuela's western neighbor. The president saying the U.S. could potentially launch a military operation there. We know Colombia's president has rebuked him for that threat. What are the biggest risks posed by just all these escalating tensions for the region?
Well, the most immediate risk is, of course, of any kind of military action elsewhere beyond Venezuela. But beyond that, and we've already seen these with the statements around Greenland, certainly Colombia, as you mentioned, but also some threats against Mexico, is the idea that the United States seems to be running rampant and making policy through threat alone. And this, of course, for countries like Colombia, where the sights now seem to be set on, especially for Gustavo Petro, the president, have to be completely terrifying as a potential, because this is a democratically elected president. It's a stable government otherwise. But if the threat of instability becomes real, then he may have a lot of problems domestically in terms of remaining in control.
Alejandro Velasco, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Well, closer to home, Nick Reiner will appear in court later today to be arraigned on murder charges in the killing of his parents, acclaimed director Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle. The couple was found stabbed to death at their Brentwood home last month.
The LA County Sheriff's Department tells NBC News Reiner is still being monitored, but that blue suicide prevention smock he was seen wearing in court last month has now been removed. The 32-year-old faces 2 counts of first-degree murder. He's being held without bail at a jail in downtown LA and has not yet entered a plea.
NBC News legal analyst Danny Cevallos is here on set with us to break down the case. Danny, good morning. Good to see you. So the LA District Attorney is pursuing a murder conviction with special circumstances. Explain that and just how serious that is.
These are potentially the most serious of charges, and I say that because they make him eligible for capital punishment, in other words, the death penalty. However, the DA has not indicated whether they're going to seek the death penalty, and it's my suspicion that it's likely that they will not. When you look at the statistics, there are barely any death penalty cases sought by DAs in this jurisdiction. And then, secondly, you do have some factors that suggest this might have been a crime of passion, even though the special circumstances, the use of a knife, could qualify it for capital punishment.
It's not clear yet if the weapon was recovered, but what evidence do you think is going to be key to this entire case?
The weapon would be nice, but all the evidence so far, and I shouldn't say evidence, really more reports suggest that the knife will not be essential. And key to me is the fact that he was apprehended relatively soon after. That suggests that the law enforcement have a lot of information other than the murder weapon. And candidly, it's often the case that the murder weapon is disposed of by a killer. So prosecutions proceed all the time in the absence of this evidence. And again, the fact that he was apprehended so quickly suggests to me that law enforcement has plenty of evidence and they won't necessarily need the knife in this case.
And Danny, Nick Reiner's struggles with substance abuse, even periods of homelessness, or something that he's spoken publicly about at length over the years. And we actually just learned that he had been diagnosed with schizophrenia and that his medication was changed at some point before these killings took place. That is according to 3 sources with direct knowledge there. As Joe mentioned, we also know he was on suicide watch, recently taken off. But how do these mental health struggles factor in?
If, and I emphasize if, the defense is considering an insanity defense, then of course these will all be helpful. But the insanity defense is a gambit. It is a risky defense because you have to admit to all the other elements of the crime and then prove in addition that you were insane. But oftentimes, when it's used, it's usually the only option. And the key is not whether or not someone has schizophrenia or they've been diagnosed with some mental health condition. The legal definition is essentially that the person was unaware that society deemed what he was doing to be wrong. So any effort to run away, any effort to hide the crime, get rid of the knife, for example, those are ticks against the use of the insanity defense. And the insanity defense has fallen much out of favor in the last 3 or 4 decades, especially since the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan. So the insanity defense, it may be their only option, but it often is not a palatable one.
What are the other possible options, if not the insanity defense?
What I call SODI, S-O-D-D-I, some other dude did it. Now, I didn't make up that acronym. It's just used by defense attorneys everywhere. I don't think that's very likely because, again, there has been so much reporting that he was apprehended and a suspect almost immediately. And in fact, there are even reports of his odd behavior the night before, which is going to be thumbtacked onto the huge body of evidence I suspect law enforcement has. Again, the key to me is how he was a suspect virtually immediately. The police zeroed in, and there was nobody else on their mind. Of course, as a defense attorney, that can often be the tunnel vision defense. You didn't consider the other possibilities because you zeroed in on my client.
All right, Danny Savalas, thanks as always.
In Texas, the trial of a former school police officer accused of not doing enough to stop the deadly attack in Uvalde took an unexpected turn. The judge abruptly ended proceedings yesterday after the defense objected to one of the prosecution's star witnesses. Because of that, jurors will not be in the courtroom today. NBC News correspondent Ryan Chandler was there for opening statements and has all the details. Ryan, good morning.
Former school police officer Adrian Gonzalez was one of the first on the scene as a gunman attacked Robb Elementary, and he could be the first held criminally responsible for the delayed police response. He pled not guilty to 29 counts of abandoning or endangering a child.
Waited nearly 4 years. We want to see justice for our baby girl.
Inside the courtroom, Gonzalez sat stoically as prosecutors pointed their fingers at him, telling the jury he didn't do enough to stop the gunman before 19 students and 2 teachers were brutally murdered.
When you hear gunshots, you go to the gunfire.
Instead, prosecutors charge he stood around waiting for help to arrive.
He enters the building for 8 minutes and 45 seconds after he got there, and after the damage was done.
Defense arguing Gonzalez was trying to assess a fluid situation and did not fail to act.
The government wants to make it seem like he just sat there, you know. He didn't just sit there. He did what he could with what he knew at the time.
They encouraged the jury to not blame Gonzalez for the crimes of the shooter.
The monster who hurt those children is dead.
The jury was presented with these photos of the shooter's vehicle and a rifle nearby, security footage, and frantic 911 calls. Of the hundreds of officers on scene, Gonzalez and former Uvalde Schools Police Chief Pete Arredondo are the only 2 being charged. Gonzalez faces up to 2 years in prison for each charge. In the room, family members watched a day they've demanded for years.
Justice finally is going to be served.
Juanita and Jesse Rizzo's 9-year-old niece, Jackie Caceres, was killed in her classroom.
What does justice really look like for you?
Allowing the families, survivors, victims, some sense of closure, some sense of understanding, accountability. That's justice to me.
Ryan Chandler, NBC News.
And attorneys from both the defense and prosecution will be in court today sorting out that disagreement with the judge. Families of the victims say they are hoping the snag does not force a mistrial. As of now, jurors are set to return to the courtroom tomorrow for more testimony. Across the South, warmer than average temps are in the forecast. So let's take a look at your Morning News Now weather.
Angie Lassman's in studio with us. Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning. And where the heck is winter? That's what a lot of people are probably asking here as they get through their day today. When you see these temperatures surging, especially into the afternoon hours, notice the upper 70s, low 80s that are expected across parts of the South. New Orleans is going to hit 78 degrees for your high temperature today. We've got Tallahassee into the upper 70s, Memphis mid 60s, even Chicago running about 13 degrees above normal and topping out just into those mid 40s for the day today. These temperatures, of course, above normal, warmer than average, and that extends all the way out to the East Coast, Philadelphia as well, hitting a high temperature today of 53 degrees. Not feeling like January by any means, and that essentially continues into tomorrow, too. You can see anywhere from the Rockies stretching to the East Coast, from top to bottom, we are running above normal. Paducah tomorrow, going to see temperatures 24 degrees above where we should be, and it's the overnight temperatures, too. Those temperatures not cooling down as much as we normally see them, so you'll wake up and get out the door in each of these mornings, and things will be above normal as well. Upper 40s for New York City tomorrow for the afternoon hours, and then still those 70s hanging on strong across parts of the South. Big picture look through the weekend, we do see a bit of a cooling trend. It's nothing too abrupt, I would say. We've got Milwaukee going from the 40s to the 30s, so kind of more typical temperatures settling in by Sunday. Hartford ends up into the upper 40s for Friday and low 40s for Sunday. Again, again, not abrupt at all. Raleigh, you hit those 70s for your Friday and Saturday plans, and then back to the 50s you go. Still fairly mild for this time of year on Sunday, 57 degrees for the high there. And then we do see a bit of a turn in temperatures for Cincinnati. We go from those upper 60s on Friday to the upper 50s by Saturday, guys, and ends up into the upper 30s by Sunday. But still, I mean, upper 30s for January, that's pretty typical. And we've got a couple of days in there where we're going to enjoy some temperature, but we don't have a whole lot of snow on the ground. And this is only going to, you know, reduce that number as well. So
make it very summer-like, spring-like.
Exactly.
All right.
Bizarre. Thank you.
You got it.
Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, chatbot controversy. Elon Musk's AI assistant Grok under fire around the world over deep-fake photos of women and children. More on the growing calls for action.
Up first, though, unrest in Iran as economic protests turn deadly. The latest when we come back. We are back with a look at the growing unrest in Iran. Yesterday, demonstrators flooded a bazaar in the capital, Tehran, as protests over the dire economic situation continue to escalate. NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons has the details.
Stunning moments on the streets of Iran. A man with a makeshift flamethrower facing off with security forces. Protests over the spiraling economy only growing. Demonstrators packing into the Grand Bazaar. Tear gas as security forces try to break up the crowd. Protesters scrambling to escape a crush of people. Flames and fury over the country's currency falling to a record low. According to an NBC News producer in Tehran, oil and some food costs 5 times more than it did last week. 2 human rights groups say at least 20 people have been killed. President Trump issuing a warning to the Iranian government Sunday.
We're watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get hit very hard by the United States.
Iran's foreign ministry spokesman saying the Iranian armed forces will show, quote, no negligence or hesitation. The people are truly exhausted, says this man. I sincerely ask those who are able to help to ease the people's pain.
Our thanks to Keir Simmons for that report. Well, there are new details in the investigation into the fire that broke out at a Swiss ski bar during New Year's celebrations, leaving 40 people dead and more than 100 injured. Local authorities say the bar had not undergone safety inspections for 5 years and that it did not have a fire alarm because it was not required for a venue of that size. Authorities are also looking into whether soundproofing material on the ceiling conformed with regulations and whether sparkling candles attached to champagne bottles thought to be the cause of the fire were permitted for use in the bar. Well, the UK and France have formally agreed to send troops to Ukraine if a peace deal is made with Russia. At a meeting in Paris, the two countries' leaders announced they will send thousands of troops to establish military hubs across Ukraine to deter further invasions. They also proposed that the U.S. should take the lead in monitoring a truce. Now, Moscow has not yet commented on the announcement, but has previously said that any foreign troops in Ukraine could be a target. Coming up, prescription concerns. A new study shows more kids are taking melatonin prescribed by their pediatricians. Dr. Azar is here with what parents should know. Your weekly checkup is next here on Morning News Now. We are back with our weekly medical checkup this week. A large review of studies have found more kids are using melatonin supplements for sleep. We're also going to take a look at how food preservatives may be linked to type 2 diabetes. Here to break down these health headlines is our friend NBC News health contributor, Dr. Natalie Azar. Always great to have you with us and always covering it all for us. Let's start on this melatonin study in kids. Why are more kids using it? I mentioned even prescribed in some cases by pediatricians. Is this safe?
So I think the take-home message that I'd like to send for people as a general thing, melatonin can be safe and reasonably effective in certain kids for a certain period of time. And the second message that I really want to resonate with people, that it is never really supposed to be a substitute for a consistent sleep routine. This is what all pediatricians will say. But yes, melatonin is on the rise. There is some evidence that it could be beneficial for kids with neurodivergent conditions like ADHD or autism. But there have been a significant number, an increased number of poisonings and emergency room visits. And you want to know why? Because these melatonin, they come in gummies. Kids like them. They're not regulated by the FDA the same way as medication. So sometimes people can get a bottle of melatonin and the amount of melatonin in the bottle is not the same as what you think you're getting. So definitely a lot of red flags there. My doctor's orders are: definitely talk to your pediatrician if you think your child is someone who could benefit from melatonin. They need to give you guidance on dosing, on timing. Keep out of reach of children. As I mentioned, those gummies, right? They are ripe for potential misuse. And above all else, a consistent sleep schedule is what pediatricians will say is the number one, number two, number three thing to do before trying melatonin.
Figure out what it is that means you need that and try to fix that.
Exactly.
Okay, this next one does not surprise me, but new research is showing specifically that many kids are spending over an hour on cell phones during school. I mean, first of all, I think that's the concern for the loss of learning, right? When you're on your phone instead of paying attention to the teacher. But more broadly, we know that cell phone use, especially social media use, isn't great for kids.
It's not. And this is, it's interesting. So my daughter's high school just recently has a new regulation now that the kids are not supposed to have their phones during the day. Because guess what? They're not looking up things for their schoolwork. They're spending time on Instagram and they even use Instagram, TikTok and Snap and all of that stuff. So and we know that social media use has been associated with decreased attention and focus, which can impact grades, not to mention mood and sleep disorders, as well as physical complaints. So my doctor's orders are this: talk to your kids about this, leave your phones at home, and maybe have a conversation with your school about saying, listen, can we really not allow these kids to be roaming the halls? Like right now, again, in my daughter's high school, if you're caught on your phone going from classroom to classroom, you will get a little subpoena.
How's that going?
Kids are still doing it, but they're more aware of it. So, I think it's a good thing. They have to keep trying. And as parents, model that behavior. You can't say, don't be on your phone while you're on your phone. I'm guilty of that.
That also doesn't surprise me. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, this last one I mentioned a moment ago, eating, and maybe not as spicy, but eating foods with more preservatives can put you at a higher risk of type 2 diabetes. What should we know? How do we know how much preservatives are in which foods?
In that. So what I liked about this study was that, and if people are interested, you can definitely go to review this study because it actually shows you what the ingredient names are. There are a lot of things that start with potassium this and sodium that. And think about
gum.
Yeah, these are, why do you think we have preservatives in food? It's to enhance shelf life, right? So that's kind of again, we're getting into the ultra-processed thing. And we've known for years that we've believed that ultra-processed foods can be negative for health. This is the first study that specifically looked at preservatives and an increased risk of type 2 diabetes. So my doctor's orders, I say this 1,000 times, and you're going to hear it from Dr. Natalie again today, please prioritize whole foods. If you have to open something in a package, it probably has a bit of, not all created equal, but if you have a whole food, you don't have to worry about preservatives. And of course, the big message here is that you want to try to limit those processed foods.
All right, Dr. Azar, good stuff today. Thanks so much. Good to see you. Coming up, we are talking tech with an inside look at all the movers and shakers at this year's Consumer Electronics Show happening right now in Las Vegas. So is AI once again stealing the spotlight, or is something else new drawing attention? Futures Now will tell you next on Morning News Now. We are back with the growing backlash over Elon Musk's chatbot Grok. The AI assistant is under fire for generating fake sexualized images of women and children, and now several countries are calling for action. Stay tuned now. Anchor Gotti Schwartz explains.
Elon Musk's AI chatbot Grok coming under fire from regulators across the globe over a rise in non-consensual and sexualized deepfake images of women and children.
I was disgusted and horrified.
Conservative content creator Ashley St. Clair, who has a child with Musk, says she's seen countless explicit photos of herself on the platform.
I immediately asked Grok to stop. Grok said, I received your request. I will no longer produce these images. And of course, there were only more requests to produce more explicit images of me, including ones of photos of me when I was underage, and Grok obliged and produced all of these images.
And some have been removed, but others remain on the site. And she's not alone. An influx of explicit content coming after Grok recently enhanced its image generation abilities with a new model last month. An analysis from the European nonprofit AI Forensics finding more than 50% of images generated by Grok between December 25th and January 1st were non-consensual sexual images, primarily targeting women, and 2% of them depicting a person who appeared to be 18 or younger.
With Grok Imagine, you can turn any of your pictures into videos.
An NBC News review of Grok's output finding though many of the inappropriate images have been taken down, Grok continues to produce sexualized images of non-consenting parties.
I found that Grok was producing at least a dozen inappropriate images every minute. People were commanding the chatbot to take people's clothes off, basically. And it's become such a meme, and so many people are doing it.
Growing calls for action. Ofcom, the UK's communications regulator, saying that they have made, quote, urgent contact with X and XAI to understand if there are any potential compliance issues that warrant investigation. Meanwhile, officials in India and Brazil have also expressed concern, with Brazil's federal deputy calling for the suspension of Grok in the country.
It's really difficult to go and outright ban technology. It's like saying, let's ban the internet. What we really need to be doing is seeing governments talk to those big companies like Meta and X and OpenAI and work with them and really work quickly.
Musk responding to the mounting criticism, posting on X that anyone using Grok to make illegal content will suffer the same consequences as anyone uploading it, though Musk also using Grok to make a deepfake version of himself wearing a bikini, calling the chatbot creation perfect. Musk and XAI have not responded to NBC News' request for comments.
All right, Gotti Schwartz, thanks for that report. Let's get to some breaking news on Wall Street this morning. Warner Brothers Discovery now has another take on Paramount's buyout offer. NBC News business and economy reporter Emily Lorsch has our Money Minute. Hey, Emily, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. That's right. This news just in. Warner Brothers Discovery's board of directors has unanimously determined that Paramount's amended bid for the company is not in the best interest of the company and its shareholders, even though it had firmer backing from billionaire Larry Ellison. WBD saying it doesn't meet the criteria of a, quote, superior proposal under the terms of WBD's merger agreement with Netflix. The company reiterates its recommendation to support the deal with Netflix. Now we wait for Paramount's next move. And Meta is delaying the launch of its Ray-Ban display glasses in France, Italy, Canada, and the UK. The company says that's because of, quote, unprecedented demand and limited inventory. Meta says it will continue fulfilling orders in the U.S. while reevaluating its international approach. And rare pieces of tech history straight from the childhood home of Steve Jobs are heading to the auction block. His stepbrother is auctioning personal items from his bedroom, including his desk, bow ties, and the first ever check that was cut by Apple for $500. That alone could sell for up to $500,000, while a separate Apple document is also up for bid at a different auction, and that is expected to sell in the range of $2 to $4 million. Savannah, but that Warner Brothers Discovery news here is big, and now we're waiting just to see what will happen next.
Absolutely. Emily, thanks for bringing us that breaking news. Well, on the tech front, artificial intelligence once again dominated this year's Consumer Electronics Show that kicked off yesterday in Las Vegas. Other big themes in tech were robotics and self-driving cars. Hyundai and Boston Dynamics revealed a humanoid robot that helped out on the trade show floor. Meanwhile, NVIDIA, Mercedes-Benz, and Uber all made announcements in that autonomous driving space. We have NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung here with us. He got a first-hand look. He joins us now with all the details. Means lots of fun pictures and video. Brian, like doing AI things.
Yep.
Great to see you. Happy New Year. What were the biggest trends in tech that you saw there?
Yeah, well, I mean, you kind of outlined some of those biggest trends. So robo-taxis are one, humanoid robots are another. But I think the broad theme here is just artificial intelligence coming for every aspect of our lives. You can see the Atlas robot ahead of you. But I think that really it's not necessarily these types of robots that are headed into our homes. It's things like smart soles that have an AI twist to them, where you put them inside your shoes and it can kind of test your balance. Things like an AI massage chair that I got to try, where it actually, as you sit in it, figures out exactly where you need to have your muscles loosen. I even saw an AI picture frame where all you have to do is just speak exactly what you want it to show, and it can change those images in just a few minutes. So some really cool stuff at CES that they hope will ultimately end up in your homes, in your workplaces, and on your commute to work as well.
Was the massage chair legit?
The massage chair, well, it's a $20,000 massage chair,
How much?
It's a $20,000 massage chair. Actually, you can see the video right there of me inside the massage chair. It looks like a transformer, and it actually has limbs that move up and down, so it can actually stretch you out. So it's unlike any other massage chair that usually just kind of has like those round knobs in the back.
No, I'm not like at a manicure salon. I try to shut it off. It's like you're like uncomfortable. This was good, actually.
That was cool, and these picture frames are really cool too. Again, all you have to do is just say, I spoke, I think, hey, show me a reporter that's on the beach with all of his equipment with him because he only got to take a paid time off last minute, and it actually in a minute it generated that. Didn't look like me though.
but sounds autobiographical.
Exactly.
Okay, Brian, you got to see, I mentioned, a humanoid robot. I mean, this is one of those things where you're like, okay, it's, the Jetsons or something like that. It's going to help produce cars, actually. I know you spoke with the head of the company behind the robot, Boston Dynamics. How does he say this is going to change the way that cars are made? Tell us about this.
Yeah, so the video that you're seeing right now is the Atlas robot. I believe it was during the NVIDIA keynote that they unveiled this brand new version of it. Boston Dynamics is basically the leading company on robotics. They've made a lot of those kind of dog-looking robots, but it's the humanoid ones that are getting a lot of attention. I spoke with the CEO, Robert Plater, about exactly what the function of this is as they partner up with Hyundai on actually deploying this in factories. Take a listen.
These 360-degree joints are really great.
Oh, whoa. But see, this is something where it looks like a human, but its joints and its movement are completely different.
Way beyond what a human can do. They're not only have a larger range of motion, most of the joints can rotate a full 360 degrees.
Literally superhuman.
It's literally superhuman. It's also stronger, typically, than a human.
So yes, it's got the head, it's got the limbs, it's about 5'9". I can't, that's not how I get up in the morning, at least I didn't today. But look, I think what's really important is that, again, Robert Plater saying this is superhuman technology that they're hoping to put on these lines so it can carry things that are heavier than a normal human being could carry, and they could, at some point, be on the assembly line building Hyundai cars. That is the game plan by 2030, at least with this project. They're going to deploy it for simpler tasks in 2028, but bigger picture, Hyundai wants to mass produce these types of robots. So when we think about this kind of future of these humanoid robots actually potentially displacing some human jobs. Again, Boston Dynamics saying it's really more of a supplement. It's coming in a matter of years, not decades.
Oh, and just think about your coworker actually being a robot like that. I mean, that's something. You mentioned things like the AI souls. What other AI wearables did you see, or things that are more, like you mentioned, kind of impacting your daily life rather than some chatbot or something big?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, at CES, in addition to the things that I listed, there are things like AI smart refrigerators where you can talk to them. There are things like rings that people can wear to kind of almost use as a dictaphone. You can, as you go throughout the day, speak into it, and you can add notes in an app and also, say, hey, I need to get some things for my grocery list. So people want AI to be incorporated into every aspect of your life, including these companies are showing it on display at CES.
Big announcements, though, also here from NVIDIA, chip maker, but getting into this autonomous driving space. Tell us about that.
Yeah, autonomous driving is really where a lot of this is coming, at least for your commute, right? We kind of talked about revolutions that are going to happen in your workplace and at home, but what you're seeing right there is the new Mercedes CLA, and this was part of the NVIDIA announcement, where this is a vehicle that has what they call level 2 autonomous driving. So people will be able to buy that new vehicle and then have basically out of the box, essentially off the lot, the ability to drive itself. Of course, it's going to be different depending on where you're using it, on the highway or in the cities, but generally this is capabilities and technology that's coming.
I am so skeptical of this. I have been in enough Waymos where I did not go where I was supposed to go. But we'll see. All right, Brian, thank you so much. Cool stuff.
Yep.
Welcome back. 1 year after the Eaton and Palisades fires tore through Altadena and the Pacific Palisades in Los Angeles, devastating whole communities, signs of recovery are emerging, including for an LA fire captain who lost his own home. NBC LA's Jonathan Gonzalez has more.
And the house wasn't very big. It was just over 1,200 square feet, but it started right around here.
For 20 years, Al and Carmen Hugo have called Altadena home.
And we had a fire pit right about here, where we, have a glass of wine and watch the hills.
Al is an LA City fire captain, and not even he thought the flames in those hills on January 7th, 2025 would ever reach their home.
And it was northeast of here, well over 2 miles away. I didn't expect the fire to do what it did.
They took this video of the historic winds at their home just hours before the Eaton fire broke out. And just hours later, the Hugos and their 4 dogs were forced to escape.
It was surreal. I can't believe it's almost been a year. It literally flew by, and the struggles of trying to rebuild.
1 year later, the couple still has no home to return to, still dealing with insurance issues even during the holidays.
It just felt emptiness and just not the same. This was the heart of the family where everybody gathered and just not the same.
But amid their struggle came a helping hand from the Widows, Orphans, and Disabled Firefighters Fund.
And through our partnership with JM Eagle, we're here today at this moment to present you with a check to help towards your recovery effort.
It was a check for $200,000.
Oh my God. So here you go. Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is amazing.
I was speechless. I couldn't believe it. It just made us feel more closer that we were going to be home.
The Hugos were one of 5 firefighting families who lost their homes in the Eaton fire. 5 families who all received the same sizable donation.
It's a big help and boost. And hopefully down the road, that's going to push us over to be able to rebuild.
Rebuild a home that took them 20 years to create and just hours to lose. But even on their now empty property, there are signs of life. A flower memorial for their granddaughter who died at childbirth, blooming once again.
Like the flowers, they were in a pot and they burned. But then I came home and to that, I couldn't believe it. And with that, she's telling me, yeah, I'm with you. Wow. Right? It's beautiful.
Certainly is. Our thanks to LA NBC's Jonathan Gonzalez for that report. 4 other firefighter families also received the same donation. Many more in Altadena still do need help, but after a difficult year, Al says that he and his wife are hopeful they'll be able to come home soon. All right, that's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Don't go anywhere. The news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks very much for being with us. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, defiance and uncertainty in Venezuela. A senior minister in the country posting video with armed men chanting their allegiance to ousted President Maduro, all as the South American nation grapples with a historic shift in leadership. President Trump now announcing Venezuela is poised to hand over millions of barrels of oil to the U.S., and stunning new details coming to light on the stealth mission that led to Maduro's capture. We are covering it all. Also this morning, President Trump's push for U.S. control of Greenland gaining renewed traction in Washington. The range of options now being discussed by the White House surrounding a potential takeover of the Arctic territory that has long been part of Denmark. Plus, 2026 already shaping up to become the year of the flu, with fresh cases surging in nearly every state across the nation. We're going to dig into some concerning new numbers from the CDC as Health Chief Robert F. Kennedy Jr. rolls out a controversial vaccine shakeup impacting America's children. And later in the hour, a centennial celebration of the groundbreaking television network that started 1 century ago as a radio network. Bring you a special look back on 100 years of NBC. 100 years condensed to 4 minutes. I think we got everything in.
Yeah, when you say NBC, don't you just hear the chimes?
You always hear the chimes. I know, it's iconic. All right, let's begin this hour with the fallout over the U.S. operation in Venezuela. President Trump has threatened a second military operation in the country if its interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, stops cooperating with the U.S.
It comes as Mr. Trump announced a multi-billion-dollar oil deal amid growing questions about Venezuela's future. NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez has the very latest from the Venezuelan border. Gabe, good morning.
Savannah, good morning. President Trump announcing that Venezuela will send up to $3 billion worth of crude to the U.S., but the move comes as repression is rising inside Venezuela following the capture of the country's authoritarian leader. Overnight, a show of defiance inside Venezuela. The country's prominent interior minister posting video surrounded by armed men declaring allegiance to now deposed leader Nicolás Maduro. Chanting, loyal always, never traitors. It follows a march supporting Maduro yesterday, all meant to send a message to President Trump, who's moving ahead with his plans for Venezuela. Announcing overnight that the country will turn over 30 to 50 million barrels of oil to the U.S., adding it will be sold at market price, with the revenue used to benefit both Americans and Venezuelans. The president also touting the stealth U.S. mission that captured Maduro and his wife.
It was amazing. And think of it, nobody was killed. And on the other side, a lot of people were killed.
Venezuela's military now says 24 of its troops died in the attack. Cuba has said 32 of its nationals were also killed. The Pentagon says just 7 American soldiers were injured. 5 are already back on duty, with 2 others still recovering, including one shot multiple times in the leg.
It was an amazing military feat.
Inside Venezuela, the remaining government is still cracking down on dissent, detaining journalists and police saying they arrested these 2 people for celebrating Maduro's arrest. People really don't want to leave their homes, this Venezuelan man who crossed the border into Colombia says, adding there are armed groups outside conducting searches. With mounting questions about who's in charge in Venezuela, acting President Delcy Rodriguez insists no external agent is governing the country. NBC News has learned the Trump administration had been in discussions with Rodriguez and her brother for months before the Maduro raid. That's according to 2 people familiar with a classified briefing to top members of Congress this week. Amid all the uncertainty in Venezuela, U.S. tensions with neighboring Colombia are escalating. The government here is promising to fight back and to defend this country's sovereignty if the U.S. were to attack. Colombia's president is also calling for nationwide demonstrations later today. Joan Savannah.
All right, Gabe, thank you very much. Well, now to our other major headline this morning. President Trump's latest push for the U.S. to take over Greenland. The administration is once again insisting that the Arctic territory that's long been a part of Denmark is needed for security reasons.
Now a new report says that a range of options to gain control of the island are on the table, including buying it or using military force to get it. But Denmark and other NATO allies are sharply rejecting the president's latest comments. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander has the latest. Peter, good morning.
Good morning to you. The president's years-long desire to take control of Greenland is picking up steam and infuriating the U.S.'s European allies, who unloaded an unprecedented rebuke directed at the U.S. just yesterday. It comes as one of the president's top advisors this week questioned the right of Denmark, a fellow NATO nation, to claim the territory, and as we learn new details about how the U.S. is considering taking it over. This morning, President Trump accelerating his push to take over Greenland. The White House revealing the president and his team are discussing a range of options for acquiring the Arctic territory from Denmark, adding that utilizing the U.S. military is always an option. President Trump recently insisted the U.S. needs Greenland for security reasons and that Denmark is not able to protect it, which Denmark disputes.
Right now, Greenland is covered with Russian and Chinese ships all over the place.
While those nations have a presence in the Arctic, Greenland is in fact not surrounded by their ships. According to the New York Times, citing U.S. officials, Secretary of State Marco Rubio told lawmakers President Trump plans to buy Greenland rather than invade it. The Times reports the president asked aides to give him an updated plan for acquiring the territory. The U.S. military has a base on the island. Vice President Vance visited it last year. On Tuesday, Denmark and 6 other NATO allies delivering a strongly worded response to the president's comments, writing Greenland belongs to its people. But top White House aide Stephen Miller asserts,
obviously, Greenland should be part of the United States.
Democrats sharply critical, but saying after the Venezuela operation, the president's words have to be taken seriously.
I certainly was amongst those who, 12 months ago or 6 months ago, dismissed his talk of taking over Greenland as an intentional distraction. I think now you have to really think about what's in the president's brain.
And multiple Republicans say they're opposed to taking control of Greenland by force, including House Speaker Mike Johnson.
Look, no, I don't think that's appropriate.
And it comes as the president is trying to unite his party, rallying House Republicans yesterday and hitting home the consequences of the upcoming midterm elections as he sees it.
You got to win the midterms, because if we don't win the midterms, it's just going to be, they'll find a reason to impeach me. I'll get impeached.
Back to that Arctic clash for a moment. Greenland and the Danish government announced that they have asked for a meeting with Secretary of State Marco Rubio following the president's latest comments. The Danish prime minister warning a U.S. military attack on Greenland would effectively end the NATO alliance. Joe and Savannah, back to you.
All right, Peter, thank you. For some perspective on the situation in Greenland and Venezuela, let's bring in Hagar Shamali. She's the host of Oh My World on YouTube, also the former spokesperson for the U.S. mission to the UN and former National Security Council Director for Syria and Lebanon. Hagar, always good to have you with us. So let's jump into the big question right now. I mean, how serious is this standoff over Greenland to peace between the U.S. and Europe? Is there a clear diplomatic path out of this?
There's a diplomatic path if Denmark basically agrees to sell Greenland to the United States. I mean, one of the things that's very clear here, and Peter mentioned this, is that, or sorry, Senator Murphy mentioned this, is that Trump, what seemed like bluster is obviously not, right? When he's saying something, he means it very seriously. And to do this, to mention this right on the heels of invading Venezuela and abducting Maduro, he's trying to ride that momentum and say, like, okay, well, now I'm going to ride that victory and I'm going to pivot to this next because I've always wanted this. Now, I will tell you that President Trump is not the first president, by the way, not the first U.S. president to have their eyes on Greenland. And the reason for that is because it's twofold. It's their natural mineral resources and their rare earth minerals, and also the fact that it is this major waterway that Russia and China use. So there is a national security argument there to be made. But when you follow on that Venezuela action, and it gives you a maximalist negotiating position, and that's what Trump is trying to take advantage of, not hopefully to militarily invade Greenland, but to say, like, look, I want to buy this, but that there's the threat of force behind me. So he wants a diplomatic deal, but it is not without this without flexing his muscles.
Hagar, if the U.S. were to exercise a military option on Greenland, what countries could we expect to come to its defense?
Well, listen, it would be a disaster, to be honest with you. It's not. It is true that it would completely upend NATO because Denmark is the one that owns Greenland. Denmark is a NATO ally, so it would completely crumble, really, with this NATO alliance. In terms of fighting back, it's I can't really speculate on that. This is a region that has its own war in its backyard with Ukraine, so they can't really be seen using or wasting their own military resources on the United States. And again, by the way, that's a point of leverage that the U.S. government, Trump administration, likely is aware of. So that's why they're going to try and use their might, this threat of might, to force a diplomatic deal of some kind.
We know the U.S. military has bases all over Europe, including Greenland, where that Space Force base is, and provides defense to the region. How does that factor into this?
Well, it gives an opportunity, and this is what Denmark is trying to negotiate with right now, right? And say, listen, you have a U.S. military base here. We're welcome to you expanding it further and expanding your military presence here. We're also welcoming the idea that there are more increased U.S. deals to mine natural resources in Greenland. So this is the negotiating position coming from Denmark. And given that footprint there from the United States, that does offer an opportunity for a diplomatic solution of some kind that doesn't entail the U.S. owning Greenland. But again, I just coming from the Trump administration and what we've seen them promise and what we see them going after, they go with this kind of maximalist position and they want to achieve it. So I'm not sure that will satisfy the Trump administration's objectives.
Hagar, while we have you, we do want to touch on Venezuela this morning. What action could U.S. adversaries like China, like Russia, take in response to this potential oil deal we're hearing about from President Trump?
Well, so on this one, they can't do a damn thing. And the reason they can't, by the way, is because China and Russia and Iran had given military assets to Venezuela, defense missile systems, drones, and so on, to protect themselves from something like the United States invasion, well, like what you saw a week ago. And all of that failed, right? This is a massive blow, by the way, not just to Venezuela's, to the Maduro regime's system and establishment and strength, but also it exposes the weaknesses of the Chinese, Russian, and Iranian military, because what they were able to give Venezuela couldn't stand. So I don't expect much from that.
All right, Hagar Shamali, keeping it real for us this morning.
Yeah.
Hagar, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Well, in Texas, the first criminal trial over the slow response to the deadly 2022 Uvalde school shooting has hit an unexpected snag. Jurors will not be in the courtroom listening to testimony today because of a disagreement between the defense and prosecution. Instead, the judge will spend the day meeting with attorneys from both sides to address concerns over a witness from yesterday. NBC News correspondent Ryan Chandler is outside the courtroom in Corpus Christi, Texas, for us with more. Ryan, good morning.
Well, good morning. It was certainly an emotional and dramatic first day of trial, and it was a day that these Uvalde families have demanded for years. The chance to prove in court what they've believed for so long, that law enforcement did not do nearly enough to save the lives of their children and loved ones.
A trial is now underway for a former school police officer accused of failing to respond to the horrific 2022 Uvalde school shooting. Adrian Gonzalez, one of the first officers on the scene, is now the first to stand trial. Gonzalez has pleaded not guilty to the charges against him, 29 counts of child abandonment or endangerment.
When you hear gunshots, you go to the gunfire.
Prosecutors say Gonzalez heard multiple shots that day, but did not act before the gunman killed 19 children and 2 teachers. Velma Duran, whose sister, teacher Irma Garcia, died in the attack trying to protect her young students, blames the officer for not helping.
Adrian could have stopped him. If he's the first one that was there, he could have stopped him.
On Tuesday, the jury heard from another former teacher, Stephanie Hale, who testified through tears about seeing the gunman.
As we were all running into the classroom, I saw I don't know what to call him, horrible person, walking.
In an extensive report on the shooting, the Justice Department pointed to cascading failures among the 376 officers on the scene that day. But Gonzalez is one of only 2 officers facing criminal charges. His defense urging the jury to not punish Gonzalez for the evil of the attacker.
The monster who hurt those children is dead.
Some of the victims' families watching the trial say they hope this is just the start of a long road to justice.
What do you hope comes next for the families of the victims?
I wish they would look into every single person that was at least in the hallway, because they stood there not knowing. The people outside, I don't know what they were waiting for.
And Savannah, as you mentioned at the top there was a dramatic snag at the end of the day yesterday relating to the testimony of that teacher we just heard from. Stephanie Hale testifying that she saw the shooter at a location where Gonzalez also would have been near. That is key to the defense's argument to disprove relating to the location of the shooter relative to Gonzalez. They said not only do they doubt the validity of that testimony, but they had never heard it before, accusing the prosecution of staging a trial by ambush. So now the jury is out until tomorrow morning as they figure that out. Savannah.
All right, Ryan, thank you.
Nick Reiner is due back in court later today in Los Angeles. The 32-year-old faces 2 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of his parents, Rob and Michelle Reiner. They were found stabbed to death at their Brentwood home last month. Reiner is being held without bail and has not yet entered a plea. NBC's Morgan Chesky joins us from L.A. with the latest. Morgan, good morning.
Yeah, Joe, good morning. And on paper, this is supposed to be a formal arraignment inside the L.A. County Courthouse. But new questions surrounding the mental health of 32-year-old Nick Reiner now opens the door for his defense team to potentially push for a delay. All of this as new tributes keep pouring in for his beloved parents.
This morning, Nick Reiner is headed back to court, charged in the murders of his parents, Rob and Michelle Reiner. No longer on suicide watch, Reiner is still being closely monitored, according to LA's NBC4, who spoke with the LA County Sheriff's Department. Multiple sources telling NBC News the 32-year-old, who had been open about his struggles with substance abuse, was diagnosed with schizophrenia several years ago, and that his medication had been changed or adjusted sometime before the killings. In December, Reiner's defense attorney calling for patience during the judicial process.
We ask that you allow the system to move forward in the way that it was designed to move forward, not with a rush to judgment, not with jumping to conclusions, but with restraint and with dignity.
After confirming the couple's cause of death as multiple sharp force injuries, the medical examiner has sealed their autopsies, placing both under a security hold, common in high-profile cases. Now, tender tributes for both only growing.
Do a little of that swing around.
The Princess Bride's Carrie Elwes sharing this rehearsal footage, writing, Rob's heart was filled with love and compassion. Martin Scorsese describing his longtime friend as a master of comedy, calling his directing debut in This Is Spinal Tap an immaculate creation. When Harry Met Sally star Meg Ryan honoring the Reiners on Instagram last month, writing, "I have to believe that their story will not end with this impossible tragedy, that some good may come, some awareness raised." And last weekend's Critics' Choice Awards, William H. Macy opening up to Access Hollywood.
And the one thing I remember about him directing was his joy. He just loved the whole process.
Stars paying tribute to the man who devoted his life to much more than Hollywood.
Rob and Michelle were tireless in their efforts to so many important causes, all stemming from one basic idea: decency. That we should all look out for each other.
And Morgan, we know there are a lot of questions about Nick Reiner's mental health. That's going to play a key role as the case moves forward, right?
Yeah, Joe, it could be absolutely critical. Legal experts that we've spoken to say that it couldn't just be a central theme of this trial, but could stop it in its tracks if Nick Reiner is deemed not competent enough to stand trial. However, at this point, it is still too early on to weigh in on that front just yet. Joe?
Morgan, thank you.
Well, we are learning new details this morning about the man suspected of killing 2 students and injuring 9 others at Brown University before fatally shooting an MIT professor days later. Officials say Claudio Manuel Neves Valente had been planning the shootings for months. That is according to video evidence police say they recovered from the New Hampshire storage unit where Neves Valente was found dead 5 days after the first shooting. According to police, he recorded the videos after the violence took place, but a motive remains unclear. Officials say, though, the transcripts did reveal the suspect targeted Brown University. Neves Valente allegedly claimed he had multiple opportunities to carry out a shooting at Brown, but he, quote, chickened out. Prosecutors said they will continue to investigate a possible motive.
On the health front, flu numbers around the country are reaching alarming high rates.
Yeah, respiratory illnesses are up in general, but the flu figures are particularly concerning and surging in 45 states. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock joins us with more on what he's hearing from emergency physicians. Sam, good morning.
Yeah, Joe, Savannah, good morning. It's not a great picture right now. The percentage of people reporting flu-like symptoms when seeing their health care provider is the highest rate in more than a quarter century since the CDC began tracking this data in the first place. Physicians say that influenza A is one of the most aggressive strains that we have seen in years. And now news that Massachusetts is reporting 4 pediatric deaths this season is elevating the urgency. With the new year just underway,
it needs to stop. No more.
Flu season is surging across the country with no signs of slowing down.
The worst part about it was every time we would think we were getting better, someone would get worse.
The latest report from the CDC showing more than 8% of all visits to a doctor were for respiratory illness, more than double the baseline and the highest rate in nearly 30 years. With estimates that there have been more than 120,000 hospitalizations and 5,000 deaths from flu so far this season.
To speak to anybody who's had it, it's absolutely miserable this year. It sticks around. You're typically sick for more than a week.
Dr. Daniel Shannon at Anderson Emergency Center in Rhode Island says the Brown University Health System has seen 15% of all ER patients reporting flu symptoms and 2/3 testing positive, prompting red status, requiring masks for everyone in their facilities.
Does that over-index what you might normally see?
It's a much higher mark than what we typically see. It's much higher than we were seeing at the same time last year.
The concerning numbers coming right as Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and HHS announcing they're removing the flu vaccine from the childhood vaccination schedule, effective immediately. Still, as of Tuesday afternoon, the CDC's website recommends everyone 6 months and older who has not yet been vaccinated this season get an annual influenza vaccine.
What are you telling them is the best course of action?
If you have vulnerable populations or if you have people in your family that can benefit from a flu shot, we still advocate getting a flu shot.
Last year's flu season was the deadliest on record for pediatric fatalities. And now for this season, the CDC already reporting 9. 2 in Boston announced this week, the first there in more than a decade.
We have not yet seen a peak. I have not seen anything that suggests that we're at the top of the crest yet.
Definitely something to think about there, guys. RSV and COVID cases, by the way, they're also on the rise, but doctors say nowhere close to what we're seeing right now with influenza. It is, of course, always a good idea to get vaccinated. And even if there is a breakthrough, they say that your symptoms will not be as serious if you've had the shot. Joe and Savannah, back to you.
All right, Sam, thank you so much.
Above average temps in the south, but then Mother Nature's stirring up even more winter weather across New England. So let's take a closer look at what your area could be expecting with your Morning News Now weather.
Angie Lassman joins us. Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning. We've got the warm temps on tap for sure, stretching from parts of the south all the way up to northern portions of the continental United States. Places like Omaha, Chicago running 10, 15, even close to 30 degrees above where they should be. Today, we get 66 in Memphis, 65 in Asheville, low 50s for Philadelphia. And notice parts of southern Texas into the upper 80s. Very untypical or atypical temperatures for this time of year. And we're going to see that continue even into tomorrow. The cold air, as we like to say, is on strike for now. We'll see some cooler kind of conditions settling in, but not until really late weekend and into early next week. So we really kind of moderate out, but slowly. Milwaukee ends up into those 30s by the time the weekend wraps up. We've got 60s in Cincinnati on Friday and then 30s by the time Sunday rolls around. And out towards the East Coast, Washington, D.C. hangs out into those 60s for both Friday and Saturday and finishes the weekend into the 50s. The winter alerts, though, they're still in place across parts of New England. This is from that quick-moving Clipper system that we were watching yesterday. Still 12 million people under those alerts as it kind of makes its last-ditch effort to drop some snow and some rain and leave us with some of that kind of those slick conditions across this region. We'll still see some lingering snow showers even into the afternoon hours, but that's going to be way far into portions of northern New England. So we'll see some improvements as the day goes on and then into tomorrow. Meanwhile, out west, we've got more of a mess for the Northwest. Storms continuing to bring coastal rain and heavy snow. This is going to also add some additional snow to the northern Sierra and Great Basin. This, of course, welcome for ski resorts, but travel-wise could make it a little iffy for folks there. So just be careful. We'll see that widespread snow across the Rockies tomorrow, picking up, again, some additional snow for ski enthusiasts there. But still some slick spots on those highways and roadways are going to be something that we'll keep a close eye on. Between now and Thursday, we'll see the potential for maybe another inch of rain closer to the coast is where you'll see those higher amounts for parts of Washington and Oregon. And then as far as the snowfall is concerned, as we get into Thursday, I think maybe a foot in some of the higher elevations, maybe a foot and a half. But again, guys, anyone who likes to hit the slopes is praying for additional snow. I've been fielding a lot of calls about this over the past couple of months, so I'm hoping that they get as much as they want at this point.
Some good news
police.
with them.
My phone's ringing off the hook.
Thank you, Angie.
Thank you.
Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, chatbot controversy. Elon Musk's AI assistant Grok under fire around the world over deep fake photos of women and children. More on the growing calls for action.
Up first, though, unrest in Iran as economic protests turn deadly. The latest when we come back. We are back with a look at the growing unrest in Iran. Yesterday, demonstrators flooded a bazaar in the capital, Tehran, as protests over the dire economic situation continue to escalate. NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons has the details.
Stunning moments on the streets of Iran. A man with a makeshift flamethrower facing off with security forces. Protests over the spiraling economy only growing. Demonstrators packing into the Grand Bazaar. Tear gas as security forces try to break up the crowd. Protesters scrambling to escape a crush of people. Flames and fury over the country's currency falling to a record low. According to an NBC News producer in Tehran, oil and some food costs 5 times more than it did last week. 2 human rights groups say at least 20 people have been killed. President Trump issuing a warning to the Iranian government Sunday.
We're watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get hit very hard by the United States.
Iran's foreign ministry spokesman saying the Iranian armed forces will show, quote, no negligence or hesitation. The people are truly exhausted, says this man. I sincerely ask those who are able to help to ease the people's pain.
Our thanks to Keir Simmons for that report. Well, there are new details on the investigation into the fire that broke out at a Swiss ski bar during New Year's celebrations, leaving 40 people dead and more than 100 injured. Local authorities say the bar had not undergone safety inspections for 5 years and that it did not have a fire alarm because it was not required for a venue of that size. Authorities are also looking into whether soundproofing material on the ceiling conformed with regulations and whether sparkling candles attached to champagne bottles thought to be the cause of the fire were permitted for use in the bar. Well, the UK and France have formally agreed to send troops to Ukraine if a peace deal is made with Russia. At a meeting in Paris, the two countries' leaders announced they will send thousands of troops to establish military hubs across Ukraine to deter further invasions. They also proposed that the U.S. should take the lead in monitoring a truce. Now, Moscow has not yet commented on the announcement, but has previously said that any foreign troops in Ukraine could be a target. Coming up, prescription concerns. A new study shows more kids are taking melatonin prescribed by their pediatricians. Dr. Azar is here with what parents should know. Your weekly checkup is next here on Morning News Now. We are back with our weekly medical checkup this week. A large review of studies have found more kids are using melatonin supplements for sleep. We're also going to take a look at how food preservatives may be linked to type 2 diabetes. Here to break down these health headlines is our friend NBC News health contributor, Dr. Natalie Azar. Always great to have you with us and always covering it all for us. Let's start on this melatonin study in kids. Why are more kids using it? I mentioned even prescribed in some cases by pediatricians. Is this safe?
So I think the take-home message that I'd like to send for people as a general thing, melatonin can be safe and reasonably effective in certain kids for a certain period of time. And the second message that I really want to resonate with people, that it is never really supposed to be a substitute for a consistent sleep routine. This is what all pediatricians will say. But yes, melatonin is on the rise. There is some evidence that it could be beneficial for kids with neurodivergent conditions like ADHD or autism. But there have been a significant number, an increased number of poisonings and emergency room visits. And you want to know why? Because these melatonin, they come in gummies. Kids like them. They're not regulated by the FDA the same way as medication. So sometimes people can get a bottle of melatonin and the amount of melatonin in the bottle is not the same as what you think you're getting. So definitely a lot of red flags there. My doctor's orders are: definitely talk to your pediatrician if you think your child is someone who could benefit from melatonin. They need to give you guidance on dosing, on timing. Keep out of reach of children. As I mentioned, those gummies, right? They are ripe for potential misuse. And above all else, a consistent sleep schedule is what pediatricians will say is the number one, number two, number three thing to do before trying melatonin.
Figure out what it is that means you need that and try to fix that.
Exactly.
Okay, this next one does not surprise me, but new research is showing specifically that many kids are spending over an hour on cell phones during school. I mean, first of all, I think that's the concern for the loss of learning, right? When you're on your phone instead of paying attention to the teacher. But more broadly, we know that cell phone use, especially social media use, isn't great for kids.
It's not. And this is, it's interesting. So my daughter's high school just recently has a new regulation now that the kids are not supposed to have their phones during the day, because guess what? They're not looking up things for their schoolwork. They're spending time on Instagram and that they even use Instagram, TikTok and Snap and all of that stuff. So and we know that social media use has been associated with decreased attention and focus, which can impact grades, not to mention mood and sleep disorders, as well as physical complaints. So my doctor's orders are this: talk to your kids about this, leave your phones at home, and maybe have a conversation with your school about saying, listen, can we really not allow these kids to be roaming the halls? Like right now, again, in my daughter's high school, if you're caught on your phone going from classroom to classroom, you will get a little subpoena.
How's that going?
Kids are still doing it, but they're more aware of it. So, I think it's a good thing. They have to keep trying. And as parents, model that behavior. You can't say, don't be on your phone while you're on your phone. I'm guilty of that.
That also doesn't surprise me. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, this last one I mentioned a moment ago, eating, and maybe not a surprise, but eating foods with more preservatives can put you at a higher risk of type 2 diabetes. What should we know? How do we know how much preservatives are in which foods?
In that. So what I liked about this study was that, and if people are interested, you can definitely go to review this study, because it actually shows you what the ingredient names are. There are a lot of things that start with potassium this and sodium that. And think about
gum.
Yeah, these are, why do you think we have preservatives in food? It's to enhance shelf life, right? So that's kind of like again, we're getting into the ultra-processed thing, and we've known for years that we've believed that ultra-processed foods can be negative for health. This is the first study that specifically looked at preservatives and an increased risk of type 2 diabetes. So my doctor's orders, I say this 1,000 times, and you're gonna hear it from Dr. Natalie again today, please prioritize whole foods. If you have to open something in a package, it probably has a bit of, not all created equal, but if you have a whole food, you don't have
We have breaking news off the coast of Venezuela. The U.S. has started an operation to seize an oil tanker there. That's according to 2 U.S. officials. And one of those officials tells us the ship has been secured. NBC News senior national correspondent Courtney Cubey joins us now with more on this breaking story. So, Courtney, this tanker, formerly known as Bella 1, recently that name changed to the Marinera. It's Russian flagged. Help us understand what that means and what you're learning about this operation.
Right. So it's and at this point, the U.S. still sees it as a stateless vessel. So they don't, at least as of this morning, they still do not acknowledge that it is a Russian flagged vessel. But you'll remember this all started over the holidays more than a week ago, when then the Bella 1 left Venezuela. The U.S. was enforcing this embargo or stopping or blocking ships that were leaving Venezuela that had any kind of sanctions or carrying oil, and they were seizing and interdicting these ships, primarily with the Coast Guard, usually with support of the United States military. But the Bella 1 evaded that. They brushed off the efforts for the U.S. to board that ship and then started making their way towards Europe. Since then, the U.S. has essentially been in pursuit of that tanker. There are reports that Russian naval assets have also joined in and have been essentially escorting that ship. We've been watching now as the U.S. has been pursuing it. Now, officials telling us that they began planning for an operation to actually seize it now that it's in European waters. And in fact, that did occur this morning. One of those officials saying the U.S. seized the Bella 1, that it was a mission that was led by the Department of Homeland Security in support or with support of the United States military, the Department of Defense, and that the Department of Homeland Security actually has the lead. Now, guys, what that pretty much means is that there was Coast Guard involvement. That's what we've seen in these other seizures. Remember, the Coast Guard falls under DHS. And that at this point, there are now U.S. law enforcement officials who are on board of that ship, Joe.
You mentioned those reports that Russia's been escorting this ship. That raises the question, first of all, certainly this will raise tensions between Moscow and Washington. But do we have any idea if there were any incidents, any tensions, any shots fired during this operation?
Yeah, we have no indication of that at this point, but that's one of the questions we're asking. I mean, this has literally just been unfolding in the last hour or two that this interdiction and seizure occurred. Remember, the past several ships that the U.S. has done this since they began this. I mean, essentially what is a naval blockade or oil blockade from Venezuela, they have been done without any kind of real incident. The Coast Guard who are used for this are these elite forces who are very highly trained, specially trained for these sort of dangerous boardings like this. So this is literally what they're trained to do. The U.S. military, so far, we don't know the details of this mission yet today, but so far they've been involved essentially in just bringing the Coast Guard to the ship. So you'll remember that in one of the cases, we saw helicopters bringing men who were in fatigues. They were, heavily kitted up with gear, large weapons. They were U.S. Navy helicopters that actually brought them to the ship, but those were actually Coast Guard, elite Coast Guard forces who did the boarding there, and then in conjunction with law enforcement officials who came on board and were essentially taking over that ship. In some cases, they brought them back to the United States. It's unclear what will happen here because unlike the previous seizures, interdictions and seizures that were done down in the Caribbean or closer to Venezuela, this one is now all the way in European waters. It's almost to Ireland, frankly, at this point. So it's not clear what will happen here. I do expect that United States European Command will have something to say about this later today because it's in their area of operations. If not, we should hear something from the Pentagon at some point today, Joe.
And with these previous oil tankers that were seized, what happened once they were seized?
Well, remember, the U.S. said that the oil now, well, the Trump administration said that the oil now belongs to the United States. So presumably that will happen here. The big difference in this one is, as we said, the Bella 1, they didn't take the boarding. They rejected it, they rebuffed it, and they kept moving. For now days, they've been sailing east towards Europe. The other big difference here is the owner. This is, as you mentioned, a Russian flagged ship. The United States doesn't recognize that.
or they haven't up to this point. So it's not clear if that's going to be a factor here or not, that there's a Russian involvement here. We know that the Russians did not want the United States to interdict this shipment. So that could play a big part in what happens to this oil as well. It's hard to imagine the U.S. bringing the tanker all the way back across the Atlantic to the United States, but that's what we saw happen with a previous one where they brought it from the Caribbean up to Texas, and the U.S. now has control of that oil.
All right, lots of questions. Courtney Cubey, we'll let you get back to your reporting. Thanks so much for joining us. More news now after this.
Investigation. Meanwhile, officials in India and Brazil have also expressed concern, with Brazil's federal deputy calling for the suspension of grok in the country.
It's really difficult to go and outright ban technology. It's like saying, let's ban the internet. What we really need to be doing is seeing governments talk to those big companies like Meta and X and OpenAI and work with them and really work quickly.
Musk responding to the mounting criticism, posting on X that anyone using grok to make illegal content will suffer the same consequences as anyone uploading it, though Musk also using grok to make a deepfake version of himself wearing a bikini, calling the chatbot creation perfect. Musk and XAI have not responded to NBC News' request for comments.
All right, Gotti Schwartz, thanks for that report. Let's get to some breaking news on Wall Street this morning. Warner Brothers Discovery now has another take on Paramount's buyout offer. NBC News business and economy reporter Emily Lorsch has our Money Minute. Hey, Emily, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. That's right. This news just in. Warner Brothers Discovery's board of directors has unanimously determined that Paramount's amended bid for the company is not in the best interest of the company and its shareholders, even though it had firmer backing from billionaire Larry Ellison. WBD saying it doesn't meet the criteria of a, quote, superior proposal under the terms of WBD's merger agreement with Netflix. The company reiterates its recommendation to support the deal with Netflix. Now we wait for Paramount's next move. And Meta is delaying the launch of its Ray-Ban display glasses in France, Italy, Canada, and the UK. The company says that's because of, quote, unprecedented demand and limited inventory. Meta says it will continue fulfilling orders in the US while reevaluating its international approach. And rare pieces of tech history straight from the childhood home of Steve Jobs are heading to the auction block. His stepbrother is auctioning personal items from his bedroom, including his desk, bow ties, and the first ever check that was cut by Apple for $500. That alone could sell for up to $500,000, while a separate Apple document is also up for bid at a different auction, and that is expected to sell in the range of $2 to $4 million. Savannah, but that Warner Brothers Discovery news here is big, and now we're waiting just to see what will happen next.
Absolutely. Emily, thanks for bringing us that breaking news. Well, on the tech front, artificial intelligence once again dominated this year's Consumer Electronics Show that kicked off yesterday in Las Vegas. Other big themes in tech were robotics and self-driving cars. Hyundai and Boston Dynamics revealed a humanoid robot that helped out on the trade show floor. Meanwhile, NVIDIA, Mercedes-Benz, and Uber all made announcements in that autonomous driving space. We have NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung here with us. He got a first-hand look. He joins us now with all the details. Means lots of fun pictures and video of Brian doing AI things.
Yep.
Great to see you. Happy New Year. What were the biggest trends in tech that you saw there?
Yeah, well, I mean, you kind of outlined some of those biggest trends. So robo-taxis are one, humanoid robots are another. But I think the broad theme here is just artificial intelligence coming for every aspect of our lives. You can see the Atlas robot ahead of you. But I think that really it's not necessarily these types of robots that are headed into our homes. It's things like smart soles that have an AI twist to them, where you put them inside your shoes and it can kind of test your balance. Things like an AI massage chair that I got to try, where it actually, as you sit in it, figures out exactly where you need to have your muscles loosen. I even saw an AI picture frame where all you have to do is just speak exactly what you want it to show, and it can change those images in just a few minutes. So some really cool stuff at CES that they hope will ultimately end up in your homes, in your workplaces, and on your commute to work as well.
Was the massage chair legit?
The massage chair, well, it's a $20,000 massage chair.
How much?
Which It's a $20,000 massage chair. Actually, you can see the video right there of me inside the massage chair. It looks like a transformer, and it actually has limbs that move up and down, so it can actually stretch you out. So it's unlike any other massage chair that usually just kind of has like those round knobs in the back.
No, and not like at a manicure salon. I try to shut it off. It's like you're like uncomfortable. This was good, actually.
That was cool, and these picture frames were really cool too. Again, all you have to do is just say, I spoke, I think, hey, show me a reporter that's on the beach with all of his equipment with him because he only got to take a paid time off last minute, and actually in a minute it generated that. Didn't look like me though.
But sounds autobiographical.
Exactly.
Okay, Brian, you got to see, I mentioned, a humanoid robot. I mean, this is one of those things where you're like, okay, it's, the Jetsons or something like that. It's going to help produce cars, actually. I know you spoke with the head of the company behind the robot, Boston Dynamics. How does he say this is going to change the way that cars are made? Tell us about this.
Yeah, so the video that you're seeing right now is the Atlas robot. I believe it was during the NVIDIA keynote that they unveiled this brand new version of it. Boston Dynamics is basically the leading company on robotics. They've made a lot of those kind of dog-looking robots, but it's the humanoid ones that are getting a lot of attention. And I spoke with the CEO, Robert Plater, about exactly what the function of this is as they partner up with Hyundai on actually deploying this in factories. Take a listen.
These 360-degree joints are really great.
Oh, whoa. But see, this is something where it looks like a human, but its joints and its movement are completely different.
Way beyond what a human can do. They're not only have a larger range of motion, most of the joints can rotate a full 360 degrees.
Literally superhuman.
It's literally superhuman. It's also stronger, typically, than a human.
So yes, it's got the head, it's got the limbs, it's about 5'9". I can't, that's not how I get up in the morning, at least I didn't today. But look, I think what's really important is that, again, Robert Plater saying this is superhuman technology that they're hoping to put on these lines so it can carry things that are heavier than a normal human being could carry, and they could, at some point, be on the assembly line building Hyundai cars. That is the game plan by 2030, at least with this project. They're going to deploy it for simpler tasks in 2028, but bigger picture, Hyundai wants to mass produce these types of robots. So when we think about this kind of future of these humanoid robots actually potentially displacing some human jobs. Again, Boston Dynamics saying it's really more of a supplement. It's coming in a matter of years, not decades.
Oh, and just think about your coworker actually being a robot like that. I mean, that's something. You mentioned like things like the AI souls. What other like AI wearables did you see, or things that are more, like you mentioned, kind of impacting your daily life rather than some chatbot or something big?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, at CES, in addition to the things that I listed, there are things like AI smart refrigerators where you can talk to them. There are things like rings that people can wear to kind of almost use as a dictaphone. You can, as you go throughout the day, speak into it, and you can add notes in an app and also, say, hey, I need to get some things for my grocery list. So people want AI to be incorporated into every aspect of your life, including these companies are showing it on display at CES.
Big announcements, though, also here from NVIDIA. Chip maker, but getting into this autonomous driving space. Tell us about that.
Yeah, autonomous driving is really where a lot of this is coming, at least for your commute, right? We kind of talked about revolutions that are going to happen in your workplace and at home, but what you're seeing right there is the new Mercedes CLA. And this was part of the NVIDIA announcement, where this is a vehicle that has what they call level 2 autonomous driving. So people will be able to buy that new vehicle and then have basically out of the box, essentially off the lot, the ability to drive itself. Of course, it's going to be different depending on where you're using it, on the highway or in the cities. But generally, this is capabilities and technology that's coming.
I am so skeptical of this. I have been in enough Waymos where I did not go where I was supposed to go. But we'll see. All right, Brian, thank you so much. Cool stuff.
Yep.
Welcome back. 1 year after the Eaton and Palisades fires tore through Altadena and the Pacific Palisades in Los Angeles, devastating whole communities, signs of recovery are emerging, including for an LA fire captain who lost his own home. NBC LA's Jonathan Gonzalez has more.
And the house wasn't very big. It was just over 1,200 square feet, but it started right around here.
For 20 years, Al and Carmen Hugo have called Altadena home.
And we had a fire pit right about here, where we, have a glass of wine and watch the hills.
Al is an LA City fire captain, and not even he thought the flames in those hills on January 7th, 2025 would ever reach their home.
And it was northeast of here, like well over 2 miles away. I didn't expect the fire to do what it did.
They took this video of the historic winds at their home just hours before the Eaton fire broke out. And just hours later, the Hugos and their 4 dogs were forced to escape.
It was surreal. I can't believe it's almost been a year. It literally flew by, and the struggles of trying to rebuild.
1 year later, the couple still has no home to return to, still dealing with insurance issues. even during the holidays.
It just felt emptiness and just not the same. This was the heart of the family where everybody gathered and just not the same.
But amid their struggle came a helping hand from the Widows, Orphans, and Disabled Firefighters Fund.
And through our partnership with JM Eagle, we're here today at this moment to present you with a check to help towards your recovery effort.
It was a check for $200,000.
Oh my God. So here you go.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is amazing.
I was speechless. I couldn't believe it. It just made us feel more closer that we were going to be home.
The Hugos were one of 5 firefighting families who lost their homes in the Eaton fire. 5 families who all received the same sizable donation.
It's a big, big help and boost. And hopefully down the road, that's going to push us over to be able to rebuild.
Rebuild a home that took them 20 years to create and just hours to lose. But even on their now empty property, there are signs of life. A flower memorial for their granddaughter who died at childbirth, blooming once again.
Like the flowers, they were in a pot and they burned. But then I came home and to that, I couldn't believe it. And with that, she's telling me, yeah, I'm with you. Wow. Right? It's beautiful.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.